Hi and welcome. This is a video conversation on ETV Bharat regarding the current TLP protests going across Pakistan, particularly Lahore. Pakistan has witnessed violent protests in the last week that continue in Lahore that has left many policemen dead and several protesters injured. The protests have been in the wake of the Charlie Hebdo's republishing of the cartoon of Prophet Muhammad, and the TLP's demand that the French ambassador in Islamabad be ousted. The protests have been ongoing, and the government has been trying to hold negotiations with the TLP, but so far there hasn't been much improvement on the ground. To discuss this, we have with us senior journalist from Pakistan, Ms. Yusra Askari. Thank you so much, Ms. Askari, for joining us. I would like to straight away ask you about the ground situation in Lahore today, because we could see the visuals coming out from Lahore, and the crowd seems to be growing every minute of the day. So what do you see, and what do you think is the protest heading towards?
Samia, the level of protest has considerably subsided over the last 24 hours, so to say. The kind of hype they had created, the protesters had created on the streets of Lahore, predominantly Yatim Khana Chowk, where there was a large confrontation between police forces and the protesters, was completely out of control. Over 16 law enforcers were taken into custody. They were only released early hours of today after Sehri. As we speak today, we know that negotiations between the government of Pakistan and the TLP are underway. The third round is likely to commence after iftar, which is a short while from now, and we are likely to hear from the Minister of Interior, Sheikh Rashid, as to where those consultations and negotiations have been taken. The question many Pakistanis wish to ask is, how is the government negotiating with a banned organization? And the question that they wish to put forward to the government is, how, after so much violence, can the government take on a negotiation with a banned outfit in the wake of the killing of almost 4 policemen on the streets of Lahore? Samia?
So we understand that the policemen were taken hostage and they were released after the round of negotiations. 2 rounds of negotiations have already been held, and Prime Minister Imran Khan already addressed the nation in the evening today, where he said that the TLP and the government of Pakistan, as in the ruling party, and have the same agenda, but the approach should be different, and they banned TLP because of its violent clashes with the government forces. Where do you see that PM's message, the whole protest? Where do you see this going? Do you really think that PM's message has gone across the workers, and there will be some relaxation in the country?
I think the resonance of the Prime Minister's message and the impact of it, one will have to wait and watch of how things play out this evening. What we do know that a high-level delegation has been constituted by the government of Pakistan. Clerics from across the country have gathered to meet with the TLP leadership and decide on a way forward. The country has been in huge concern with regard to the amount of bloodshed that has taken place on the streets of Lahore. And after the policemen were released earlier this morning, there has been a call for the government to actually calm down the level of anxiousness amongst the people that has resulted in 4 days of absolute anarchy on the streets of Pakistan.
Well, at a time when Pakistan is trying to rebuild its image, for the world to see, and trying to say that we want peace, and we want peace with our neighbors and other countries, and on the sides of Afghanistan, peace process also heading towards resolution, sort of resolution. So do you think the visuals coming out of Pakistan today, particularly from Lahore, of clashes, of violence, what do you think the kind of image it presents to the world from Pakistan?
Samia, I believe it projects a very worrisome image to the world, and more so to us Pakistanis who are sitting at home during the month of Ramzan, the holy month of Ramzan, and watching bloodshed on our streets. I think the Prime Minister today chose to take middle ground. He said that the respect for Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the same in our hearts as that of the TLP protesters. But the agenda, the way in which their protests are playing out against the Charlie Hebdo cartoons is not the way forward. Pakistan will not choose to isolate its neighbors or its foreign allies and will choose to proceed garnering support internationally against the cause. So therefore, the Prime Minister has chosen to take middle ground to find a way forward with the protesters and the TLP and also calm down tensions across Pakistan.
Do you in any way see Imran Khan's government under attack? Because this is not the first protest in the recent time. There was a protest led by TLP's founder, Saad Hussain Rizvi, who passed away in November, where actually the deal was brokered, because they had given a deadline. And then the PDM coming together, forming PDM, and they also led several big, huge rallies unless they finally broke up. Do you think that these continuous attacks on Imran Khan and his government, on the ruling party, do you think it is actually weakening Imran Khan's government, or do you see it affecting the government in any way?
Samya, I believe the protests that are playing out on the streets of Lahore are an attack on Pakistan's social and moral fabric. And I think more so than impacting the government, they impact the morale of the people. Yes, of course, the government will take a blow should the negotiations fall out, but one does hope to see a reconciliation of some sort that allows Lahore and the rest of Pakistan to resume normalcy tomorrow. It is the holy month of Ramzan, and Muslims are against the bloodshed of any human being in any manner. And this protest that has led to the killing of at least 4 policemen that we know and injuring of at least 500 more is absolutely not acceptable to any one of us who live in this country.
The protests have come at a time when the COVID is being seen as the second wave is coming. India is seeing an unprecedented number of cases on a daily basis, and Pakistan is no different, although the scale is not as high. But Pakistan, I'm sure, the colleges and exams were postponed, and the cases are also on the high. So do you think this huge numbers coming out on roads with no COVID protocol, no social distancing, of course, no masks to be seen of the pictures that we saw coming out? Do you think the whole protest, this could have been seen, this could have been prevented by the government in place?
Absolutely. Any amount of protest, any large-scale protest can be, prevented. But yes, of course, in the wake of COVID, this is a very frightening situation. Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, where a large number of the protests have taken place, are largely impacted by COVID. The numbers and the infection rate is hugely high. Sindh, not so much. But the congregation of so many people, minus masks, in the wake of this third wave, Pakistan is undergoing a third wave of COVID.
Yes.
This is hugely frightening, and I hope that this has little bearing, if any, but I do fear it will, on the COVID numbers in the ensuing days. As is, Ramzan is a time for congregation, and I think these protests are only adding to the fear of what may happen.
Do you think the negotiation that the government is having right now with the TLP, they could have done the same before they actually came out on the streets?
Negotiations were conducted a few weeks ago, but to expel the envoy of France, I don't think diplomatically is an option for Pakistan, and therefore there may be a stalemate even later unless a long-term decision of how to tackle the situation is reached. Imran Khan's call for international mobilization against these kind of caricatures going out is possibly a way forward, but unless there is a situation whereby which the TLP and the government of Pakistan are in agreement, I don't see the protests quelling.
On Friday, Pakistan banned social media platforms across the country, without any warning, without anything, for several hours. And today, in his address, PM Imran Khan mentioned that there were almost some 380 WhatsApp groups created out of India to, spread disinformation. What do you think does it, say about the kind of restoration of ties between India and Pakistan that we have been seeing, the reports coming out in the last few weeks that the two countries are hoping to restore ties. We saw the ceasefire agreement again. So what do you, how do you see that?
Firstly, I'd like to clarify there was warning. We were told that major social media sites would be restricted. The access to them would be restricted on Friday largely and also ensuing days in pockets where protests were large. We do believe that the protesters were using social media platforms to garner support, and therefore the government adopted the strategy to actually quell the protests and reduce the numbers of real-time footage going out. Whereas you do state Prime Minister Imran Khan's point regarding 380 social media or WhatsApp groups that put out false information, I would like to tell you that a high number of tweets on social media seen by myself and many other Twitter users like myself do put out a lot of false information. Therefore, I would propose that the government of Pakistan do put out real-time information themselves, rather than having counter information or incorrect information being put out by sources that are unverified. I think Pakistan and India are headed in the right direction vis-a-vis restoration of some sorts of normalcy. There has been a stalemate of equation over the last couple of months, and I think it's about time that these two nuclear-armed neighbors restore their ties. You cannot isolate more than half of the world's population because you don't get along politically. We are one people. If you split a fabric into two and say that you are two different people, it is not far from the truth. This move towards restoration of ties with India is a very welcome move, and I think for the interest of the region at large, it is a very, very welcome step that both governments will take to restore ties across the border.
Banning TLP, coming back to the protests and the TLP, do you think it has anything got to do with FATF since Pakistan was placed again under the grey list in February this year? So do you think the banning of TLP has anything got to do with the FATF, or do you think it is enough?
I think it could possibly. The government of Pakistan was pressured to act by its own people. The protests playing out on the streets of Lahore were cause of huge concern internally. And I think the government of Pakistan had to take this step to quell the local kind of aggression towards what was happening. Yes, of course, FATF will play out, but vigilante groups and pressure groups cannot be allowed to act like this on the streets of any country, and therefore the government had to proceed in a logical manner. What the important step to see is now, post the banning of TLP, how the government will choose to take forward the negotiation with them and how the next few hours will play out.
Last question I would like to ask is, do you think Saad Rizvi's arrest, who is only 26 years old, do you think any negotiation or the government of Pakistan is going to release him any soon to quell the protest, to have some sort of normalcy on the roads of Pakistan?
I think the government of Pakistan has held out so far. That shows their resolve not to give in to the pressures of a vigilante group. But how Saad Hussein's detention will play out over the next couple of days, over the next couple of hours, one will have to wait and watch. I think the situation is very fluid and the situation is developing as we speak. So to make a preemptive kind of call on what may happen over the next couple of hours would be premature.
Okay. Thank you so much for being with us, Ms. Askari. It was lovely having you with us here. We would surely love to have you again on our show next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. A pleasure.